Tomorrow I'm going to the thing. What time?
Support. It's okay, I'll sit here. Ben, come here.
Oh, the camera.
What he would think like this kind of crowd.
This one blocks the camera.
Ben, come, Ben. Long time I didn't see you.
The tables have been turned, you see. Now the student is talking to the professor.
That's my prop.
Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to a most important occasion with our friend James. Yes, and so the procedures that we adopt here is that we are totally non-partisan in political sense, because many of the people here belong to some political party or other. I'm totally non-political. Okay, I don't belong to any political party. Yeah. So whoever, the idea is that we speak independently in terms of our own views, right? We do not represent our political affiliations at all. That's number one. Number two, the reason why we have these fortnightly discussions is basically to educate ourselves, right? To understand different points of view and different topic areas, right? So for the recent events in Singapore, the big issue is really, is there a moral crisis in Singapore? I think that is the feeling that I think people are getting it, right? For example, I live in the HDB flat, and I noticed that this year there are hardly any flags. Yeah. So no flags. So I posted on my Facebook that are we facing a flag referendum? So it appears that people have a certain sentiment that they are expressing. So we are very happy to have James here to develop this idea, to ask this kind of questions. Right? Will it affect the upcoming elections, whether it's presidential elections or federal elections and so on? Right? And what's the mood in Singapore, and maybe is there a reflection of the kind of mood in Southeast Asia? Right? So to start with, I will ask James a few questions, just to get to know him a bit better, and then let him say whatever he wants to say, and then open it to the house for questions, and we have a good dialogue. Okay? So the first question I want to ask you is that you are based in Bangkok, right? And you also have an organization called Asian Center, right? Now, of course, I look on Google and find out a little bit about the organization, but I'm also aware that Bangkok is a hotbed of geopolitical activity, right? Between Myanmar, Bangkok, and Hong Kong, it's like a frontier, right? Against China. This is the American operation. And I'd like to hear your views also about what's happening in that area, right? For example, the recent general elections in Bangkok, right? The Forward Party won significantly, right? And their support was a lot from the younger people, right? Who were part of the democracy movement and so on. And of course, I don't know whether there's any parallel, but the democracy movement in Hong Kong, I think now we are beginning to see the evidence coming out. Right? I mean, in the recent interview with Nuri Itachi, right? With on the internet, that clearly the CIA had a lot to do with the capture of the democracy movement in Hong Kong. Does it happen? Has it also happened in Bangkok? So let's talk about that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Prof, and very glad to be here. I was here not too long ago, actually, where the Asia Center had a report on internet freedoms and political science. So I'll begin by just sharing with you what is the Asia Center and what it does. So Asia Center is about 10 years old, and it undertakes research on democracy and human rights in Southeast Asia and also East and South Asia. So why such a center? Increasingly in Southeast Asia, there are two kinds of challenges in doing political research. One, it's a money issue, because it's not profitable for universities to invest in courses in political science, international relations, or even human rights, because parents don't want to pay money to send their children to study those subjects. So there is actually, from a business point of view, it is not attractive for universities anymore to offer such courses. Secondly, in Asia, Southeast Asia in particular, whether you are a private university or a public university, there is all these political sensitivities, you know. In the old days, universities used to be partners with civil societies. The professors will be willing to book a hall. They might even have a budget to have cake and tea for seminars and things like that, but not anymore, because their deans and pro-vice chancellors is very reluctant to convene any kind of activity that is even vaguely political. But the level of curiosity for politics is quite high. So what normally would have been a research center at a university, a few of us said, okay, why don't we take it up? We take it out of the university, that's the easy part. And the more difficult part was, how do you pay for it, right? So this is the issue. Now, of course, the center has been running for 10 years. In the early days, we used to bid for projects, you know, with the UN, international organizations, and all. Our hit rate was only 2 or 3% success. But over the years, as we put up more projects, of course, then the market comes to us directly. So these days, 10 years on, almost every week I have an email of some kind, whether to, often inviting us to bid for projects, or some people will come, let's say from Europe, and say, look, we are doing a global project, would Asia Center be willing to cover Southeast Asia? But Southeast Asia, we only have 3 countries. Thailand, Malaysia, maybe Cambodia. Can you do these 3? And because we have networks around, so we can do the quality control, the research design, and so on. And then we then work with local partners to deliver. So that basically, in short, what Asia Center does, and been doing it for 10 years. You asked a range of questions about American influence, the democratization, and things like that. But actually, in the market, right, in the market of the region, the question and curiosity is not about the Americans. It's actually about China. So if you are looking at foreign interference in Southeast Asia, the key question people ask, they don't go around asking what is the American interference in Southeast Asia. They don't ask this question. But what they want to know is, what is China's role, China's influence in Southeast Asia. So I think that's the big picture question. Because of my work, of course, based in Thailand, I just came back from the Philippines and Malaysia. I've been many times to Cambodia, so I can also speak about the elections in those countries, and I have some views about the recent developments in Singapore, and happy to share. So I'll throw it back to you to see how you want to take the conversation forward.
Yeah. Maybe let's talk directly about the recent record. Like why general elections, like what happened to Pita and the Forward Party? Why was there such reluctance to offer him the leadership? despite the fact that his party won the biggest number of seats, right? Is there a concern that he may be representing American interests, and therefore the military, right? So let's be clear about this. In politics, we are dealing with gangsters on both fronts, okay? So there are no pure people in politics, right? So, for example, the Myanmar situation, right? Aung San Suu Kyi being a dissident, right? Inevitably, if she can get funding or whatever financial support from whatever source, she will be very happy to accept. And she's charged, of course, by the junta, the military, right? That she's being used as an American proxy, right? And therefore, and of course, CIA has a whole range of funding agencies, NEP, National Endowment for Democracy, right? George Soros pumping in money, and so on and so forth. And so therefore, she's politically unacceptable, right? To the powers that be, right? Who are representing some other interests as well, right? Who are not, and those interests are not aligned with American interests. So you have this confusion, right? Now, there are charges that are leveled against the Student Democratic Movement in Bangkok, right? That is also funded by National Endowment for Democracy and so on and so forth, right? And the anti-monarchy movement in Thailand, right, may represent certain democratic impulse among young people naturally, right? Young people basically they want freedom, they want democracy, right? But I don't think they are wise enough to know who's playing what game in the big picture. So how do you see it?
Okay, there are two questions here. One is about Thailand, and I will address about Thailand. And what I would push back to you, Prof, that I think you don't have a clear understanding about the philanthropic role of certain organizations, and I think you place too much emphasis, almost to a point of conspiracy theory among Americans. So, but I will do that in two steps. First, about Thailand. In order to understand Southeast Asian politics, including politics in Singapore, we have to understand two variables. What is the role of the Chinese diaspora community? I'm talking about the wave of diaspora that came after the Boxer Revolution and so on, and then Mao Zedong closed the door. We're not talking about the new wave. Yeah, so I'll unpack that for you. Simply because they hold the economic clout in the region. When you talk about Thai politics, we often talk about the 8 big Thai Chinese business families, right? So politics in Southeast Asia is in the hands of the elites, right? The elites capture the state. The state is a bureaucracy. They capture the state in order to extract financial wealth. So if we look at 3 countries, right? Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore, this is how I understand it. In Thailand, they capture the state and they rob the state dry. So the state doesn't have money in the kitty to spend. So when there are crises, there's an issue, they often need external support. So they will say in Thailand, like we did many years ago, we still not developed. In Malaysia, it's a partial robbery, right? Because a particular class of elites robbed the state. and then they still have some money, not enough, but they can, still run the economy. So Singapore is different. It keeps all the money within the state, right? Pays itself handsomely, sometimes secretly, because we don't know what is the salary, but it has enough in the coffers to spend. So because the ruling party is, sort of submerged and merged with the state. So these are the three differences. So to understand the Thai politics, first of all, you need to understand that it is an elite function. There are 8 big Chinese families, sometimes referred to simply as a conglomerate, and they are in a troika partnership with the royal institution and the military, right? And we have a joke in Thailand. In the old days, right, when you go to the police and the military, you will see a very, very burly indigenous Thai person, standing in the traffic light, to be wearing a very, very tight uniform, and stomach will be like that, dark skin and friendly. Nowadays, no more. Nowadays, all the Thai Chinese families, right, send their children to Harvard and so on. They are now the generals of the police, and so they all look slim, light skinned, handsome, pretty. So they have really, the Thai families have really transitioned from just being in business, but also gone into the military, the bureaucracy, and there's a lot of intermarriage within the monarchy as well. So we need to understand this dynamics of how the power influence takes place and eventually takes over. So let's come to Pita. So Pita does not represent the traditional elites. So Per Thai, Chamlang Panchak, and all the other pro-military parties, they are from the traditional core, the old families, right? They have vote banks in the province. They buy votes. They have local party bosses, very much like the Philippines, right? So the Per Thai is a mix. It still uses the old model, going to the ground, to the grassroots. They own businesses, they own land, they own plantations. That's how you can,
This is the Taksin party.
Yes. And also some of the other parties also, the smaller, political family, because if you own the land, if you own the business in the province, you indirectly own the people because you give them jobs. The Philippines also operates that way. We call it the warlord mafia syndrome. Once you go to the state, once you go to the province landed, they are king. India is also like that. Yeah, so it's a similar model but in a smaller scale. So what's the problem here? The problem here is the Per Thai party went directly to the voters because it used a lot of internet technology. It appealed to the young. This is how they recruit candidates. If you look at Singapore, every political party would be like, oh, you're no good, what is your commitment level? They spend all their time saying, oh, this person is no good. Very difficult to bring new blood into political parties. What the what the Move Forward Party did was they opened for application. You want to join? You are young, you have these 3 principles, sign up. So suddenly they had hundreds of candidates, right? Because in politics, he or she who have candidates in a political party is king or queen, right? Candidates in your hand make it a political party. Yeah. So how do you recruit? Now, if you are old style and you talk about values and this person is no good, that person is no good, you will never move on. But if you go to this modern style of recruiting and you say, okay, out there, sign up. Of course, they have their own interview process, candidate selection, as with any new entity, new company, new political party, sometimes you get a few misfits and you have to manage all of that. That's quite normal. But they were able to attract a lot of young people. Even one of my staff, my ex-staff, is a party list MP. So for me, for research purposes, I have great access. Bonus. So that is move forward. From day one, I'm in and out of Thailand for 20 years, So when you travel in the region, you come to Singapore, everybody has views about Thai politics, right? And they will say, oh, the Per Thai is so smart, it's a correct move. We know from day one that is the only move. In Thailand we have this word, Natang Mihu Pratung Michong, which means the doors have eyes and the windows have ears. We are talking about traditional Thai house, right? So not the two window, one door, that kind of thing. So which means we know everything even before it happens, right? So what will happen? I think we are going into some headwinds in Thailand, and what it also means, there is no more, Prof, I'm going to zoom out and also maybe touch a little bit on Singapore, but I'm happy to zoom out again. The day of one party take it all is over. Is over. We are moving to a coalition process. And because in Asia, we are not used to the art of coalition building. Coalition building is a science. It has processes, it's a journey, there are, challenges, we are not used to it, right? But this is something we need to learn. Because politics is no longer the same. Because information cannot be controlled, right? So that's one thing, and we can come back again. Let me touch upon the so-called, assume I'm not working for the CIA, by the way.
the value of your presence here is because of your intimate knowledge of the region, especially your intimate knowledge of Thailand, right? And that's why we are really benefiting from you a lot. But from the Singapore point of view, we are caught between China and the United States, and we are hypersensitive towards this geopolitical dynamic, right? And we have to play a very very smart game, but we have very limited options, right? So the question that always comes back, right, when we look at Thailand or look at Philippines, right? Obviously there are American geopolitical forces at home, right? And I would like you to talk about that, right? For example, how does it affect the democracy movement as it did in Hong Kong, right? You know about the Hong Kong situation, right?
Okay, I'm a student of history as well, so I've studied Chinese history from Han Dynasty and so on, and for all of us who understand, we can never understand any culture, but we're always learning every day. But those of us who are a little bit aware or done some reading, we know China was always big in Asia, Southeast Asia. Everything that is happening in the region is going back to the old days of the China, where Laos, Cambodia, in different forms from the Champa region, were all vassal states, right up to countries down to Indonesia, and were all paying tribute to China. That's the old geopolitical reality. Now, after Xi Jinping, and then with all these developments in China very, very quietly, and they have now come to be in front, it is, to me, just the natural order of politics that they would assert their influence in their traditional backyard. So if you go to Laos, 3/4 or 1/3 of northern Laos is China. If you go to northern Thailand, you have runaway Chinese bandits, I will call, cohabiting with mountain Thai women because they are run away from law enforcement order. And when they have children, they are sending them to Chinese language school. So when you go to northern Thailand, the number of Chinese schools there are seeing a revival. The ladies who are partners of this, we don't know what is the offense, but they are usually there legally doing some kind of business. They are learning Chinese from YouTube. It is not unusual to see cars in Laos, Chiang Rai, Cambodia with China license plates, because the road and the connectivity from Yunnan is very, very well developed. So they are actually driving down.
Plus the high speed.
Yeah, and that will take us all the way to Bangkok and beyond, right? So that's where China's influence is in the region, in the geopolitics. I think it's a lot more powerful, a lot more significant on a daily basis in Southeast Asia compared to the US. I was just in Taiwan 2 weeks ago. I had a chance to interact with very, very senior people, including on the stage with the current Taiwanese president. I met the president of parliament, and we were having, I'm very popular in Taiwan, so what hell Kong so, so very popular. So that means, when I see all the old guards, Kuomintang or DPP is Kam Cheng Ho. So when I was talking to the senior people, right, they were all very, very stressed about China taking over Taiwan. Then I asked them the question, if China takes over Taiwan, I mean, the thinking is almost an inevitability. I asked them, which country would be next? They don't want to answer. So I said, Singapore? And then they came back. I'm talking to intellectuals at the university time. They say that China has already started to reach out to the Chinese diaspora, because they see the Chinese diaspora as part of the value add of China. This is no different from historical times. It's no different from during the period of Mao, right? And where they saw the Chinese diaspora as part of the effort that can be marshaled. The Taiwanese are no different. The Taiwanese spend all their little money, building schools for Chinese language education, giving textbooks, and last year I met the de facto ambassador of Taiwan in Kuala Lumpur. So I said, how's it going? And she said, James, we spent 40 years. We spend money. Every other Chinese person in Malaysia has got a scholarship and studied in Taiwan. We sent so many of our artists. We gave them, many Malaysians, to go to Taiwan, to come to our music and acting industry. But now, the Chinese diaspora in, talk about the traditional one, not the new way, they don't want to have anything to do with Taiwan. They are sending all their children to study Putonghua in China. And, they are reluctant to engage with us. She said 40 years of engagement. This is what I said, that's your problem. Because if you wanted to engage with Southeast Asia, you should have engaged with all communities, not just the Chinese diaspora. You should have engaged with all communities, and you had 40 years to build friends, right? But now they are trying to do that with the southbound politics, but it's 40, 50 years too late. China also traditionally just looked at the Chinese community, but it's also now trying to actively, like in Malaysia, engage with the Malay community. But there's a, kind of a cultural gap there, so it's not happening as well. So, but they very much target, I teach, when I was more active at the university, we have huge number of students from China. They will tell me, they have meetings with the local CCP representative in Thailand, right? So the level of penetration, access and control is huge across Southeast Asia. Cambodia, Laos is a goner. Thailand is very much there. You go to, I've been in and out 20 years, right? First time you see in a condo, all the notices are in Thai. In the last 10 years, okay, we got a little bit of English. Now we have a third language, Mandarin. Thai, Mandarin, English is below. Before, we don't have notices in Mandarin. Do not throw your cigarette butt. Do not put your slipper outside. It's not like Singapore. If you go to a condo or any kind of housing, the Thais like to keep their doorway clean. In HDB, sir, you are more knowledgeable about these things. We allow our religious signifier or cultural signifiers to be put on our doors, right? Whatever the faith or denomination, right? In Thailand, they generally don't. Not in the houses. They may have that little blessing thing in chalk or something. Inside the house, they may have an altar, but not in the doorway. But now when you have the new immigrants from mainland, right? So you go to a condo, it's decked out in, gold and red, So there is cultural impact here. But I think when we discuss about the Americans, we talk about, so the US to me is a non-player in so many ways in Southeast Asia. They want to have some influence, yes, but
so you would say that the US should have more influence in order to counter the Chinese influence?
I think it's a geopolitical thing. I think it's about spending the money. It's about spending the money. I mean, foreign policy is all about the money, right? The mainland approach is IPIT, cheap and good, right? So they will appeal to your values, culture. They will try to ask you to do surveillance for free, or they will ask you to organize and say nice things about China for free. Like I said, the Chinese also approach me. They will approach me as CTGN. Every month they invite me to give some interview. I try to calibrate. I only talk about ASEAN stuff, right? I don't talk about China, right? Because otherwise I'll be entrapped to say only positive things. So, but I also want to, keep all doors open, right? So I engage on ASEAN. They want some technical information, I provide. Chinese think tanks will contact me to organize seminars or online stuff, which is geared towards Chinese foreign policy, right? All these guys, receive money from the state, so this is the real way. Whereas the Americans, they fund the military, for example. They send the generals for training. They give scholarships, but the scholarship is open gate because China gives a lot of scholarships. I have a former student of mine from Panasonic University. He got a scholarship. I wrote him a recommendation letter from NUS. He did Southeast Asian study and art. Actually, you'll be pleased. He's gone back, and then he's been trying to get for scholarships here and there. Not successful in the West. Australia, Canada, China gave him. So he sent me, right? There were 3 signatures on his certificate. It's called the China ASEAN Scholarship. The chair of the committee is from China. The 2 subcommittee chairs is one from Myanmar and one from Cambodia. That already told me everything, right? And they're giving scholarship. So it's about who's willing to spend more money. I think the Chinese are able to move very sophisticatedly, culturally. You want to measure China's influence in the region, you look at the number of WeChat users in each of the countries. It has grown exponentially. That's how you find out. You find out how many new Chinese publications and portal is in Cambodia, in Thailand, and I'll just end up, I know there's a question there. Or they buy ad time. You open the Vientiane Times, every Wednesday there's 2 big pages from China Daily. Or primetime TV. They buy 15 minutes. During the height of the COVID, the Chinese ambassador was on TV, on Thai TV, speaking in perfect Thai, saying that Thai people have been tricked in believing that the Sinovac vaccine is no good. There are some troublemakers from Thailand that are, saying negative things about the Sinovac. So, just a flavor.
Yeah, okay, so I think that we shift the discussion, because I think that you made your point that the Chinese influence is growing and is tremendous, right? And we should be concerned. But I also like to hear from our friends here, yeah, whether how do we feel about Chinese influence in Singapore? I don't get the feeling that there have been some grumbles about some of the Chinese that came here, that their social manners are not to our liking and so on, but that's not quite minor, right? But in terms of China's influence on Singapore, I may be wrong, but I don't sense that we are very concerned about that. Right? What do you all think?
No, I pose this question, right? Nothing to do with regional politics, right? Because my understanding is that tonight we are touching a lot on the local politics. Yeah. Right. Okay.
I'd like to add more context to Dr. James Kunes's description of condo life in Thailand. My family actually migrated from China during the interwar years, and half of the branch is actually in Thailand. So, considered somewhat recent immigrants, but that entire branch of the family has forgotten how to speak Chinese or even dialect. And that is because during the dictatorship of World War II in Thailand, the social compact was made between the Chinese community then that they would fully, how do you say, naturalize themselves and go by Thai names and speak Thai instead of using Chinese dialects as their lingua franca. So for you to say that Chinese, written Chinese is actually making a comeback in daily, or at least in condo life, is quite actually interesting and shocking, because it is a development that, well, that military general and his successors would not have wanted and were trying to stave off, actually.
I think that times have changed, right? So I think your point is
well, my
right.
when my grandfather's brother's side of the family came to visit Singapore 2 years ago, just in the middle of COVID, none of them spoke Teochew, none of them spoke Mandarin,
Because now
so that is actually still going on.
completely.
That's still going on, but I think the fact is the new immigrants from the new Thai Chinese and the old Thai Chinese have a vast cultural gap, which I think will probably be replicated in Singapore as well.
Yeah, okay. So I think your point is made. I want to shift the discussion now to Singapore, okay? Because the title of our discussion is really, is there a moral crisis in Singapore, and what are its manifestations politically? Right? Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. Vernon, maybe I can have that. Yeah. Vernon, I'll come back to you. There's plenty to unpack there. I want to jump from what I said in the region to Singapore, and I will just want to pull up a few things. What I think is relevant for Singapore. First, professionally speaking, looking at research on political science, international relations, in the old days when we talk about democracy, good governance, the key variable we will use, and I think many of us will be familiar with separation of power, the judiciary, executive, legislature.
Rule of law.
Yeah, rule of law.
Rule by law.
Yeah, well, that's a different law. We talk about media freedom. These were the variables we talk about. Right now, the key variable about good governance, democracy, and all of that is the two key words: public accountability and anti-corruption. So these are the big words that are being mainstream. If you go to any democracy conference, whether it's academic or policy, the opening panel would be on public accountability or anti-corruption, not about rule of law or media freedom anymore, because they're seen as the most important variable these days to ensure good governance. So this is one sort of intellectual, philosophical, political philosophy development. The second issue is when you go for change, when you go for political contestations, the parties that cross the line are the ones that have a very, very clear reform agenda, and they do not backtrack under political pressure, internal lobbying, and so on. So that means if they are quite clear, the political leadership is quite clear that they want to go with the reform. They first of all make sure that within their rank and file, you don't have an anti-reformist or anyone who will go against the reform agenda. And also, as you are going campaigning towards a political end, you're going to cross the line, there will be pressures, so-called pressures, to soften your stance away from the reform agenda. The ones who stick to the reform agenda are the ones that cross the line. Move Forward Party, Pakatan Harapan. just to name a few, right? Then the third variable. So I mentioned what is the key issue, public accountability / anti-corruption. And then we go to the reform agenda. If you want to do politically well, you need to have a clear reform agenda. Reform agenda also attracts the young, right? So it's values-based. And the last part is the fact that there's no more winner take all. Coalition must be mainstream, and you need to work towards it, both pre and post election. It's a no-brainer. So these are the variables in the region, sir, and I want to just explain how I see this in Singapore. So I'll address the first point. By the way, I'm also speaking at the SDP event tomorrow, so that's a plug, so you're most welcome. I still have homework to do. I'm doing research actually about this whole thing, about all this shenanigans or scandals. I was disallowed the word scandal here, but now in retrospect, I think I was quite right. But never mind, you can comment later. I just let it drop. And then, and you know, the event is tomorrow afternoon, so I will also just be a bookworm tomorrow and finish my research. But it's 3/4 done, so I can share with you what I'm finding, right? First of all, I think we are discussing whatever that's happening in our society in a very, very short term, very now in history time. My research has shown, and I'll be presenting this tomorrow in a more detailed way, but I can just share with you. We have problems with the People Actions Party from 1966. Corruption cases. So I've been documenting case by case. I can tell you, each of them who have been corrupt, I'm not talking about the moral issue, which is a different one, I'm just talking about those dealing with financial, minimum have spent minimum 3 terms in Parliament. So that means these people have been in Parliament. These are facts. Yeah, please.
How did you mean 1966? What is that?
Oh no, I mean I do proper research. I mean go to National Archives, newspaper records, and
so there were incidents, there were events in 1966 pointing towards what you were concluding.
Yeah, 1966 is one incident. Then you have another incident in 75, and so on and so forth. You almost have regular incidents.
You can ask for incidents.
Yeah. So I'm actually, you know, tabling them out.
Because quite a few of us here have raised that, right? We need to find who are these fellows.
Well, I have to set up and look at my phone, which I can, but I just want to give you the big picture. Big picture first. So there has been a constant flow of, let's say, financial misuse of office kind of behavior. There's one slither and it's regular. Okay, that's one. So when we talk about the incident now, we should go back historically and pull out the facts. Then you have a slither of this ethics, moral, you know, personal behavior issues, right? I don't want to judge. I think many of us don't want to judge, you know, because these are personal choices and affect individuals' behavior, you know, all of that. But I think we can call out in those incidents procedural matters. You know, there was conflict of interest. Why was it, you know, managed this way, and all of that. Then there is another category. And this is where the write-out issues fit in. There's a list of people who have been found not liable in any way. So the state has made some inquiry, made some investigation, appointed some committee and so on, and then found out there was no wrongdoing. So there is also that issue. What do we see? In the early days, when something like this happened, it always involved an SMC. Most of the time, there was a by-election. With the and that is some level of accountability. But with the GRC system, and with the Prime Minister through the court case having the right to decide when to call an election for a GRC, there's no accountability. So you have more accountability in an SMC, fully SMC system, but in a GRC, that accountability has disappeared. So this is a very important thing. The other thing, and I invite you to look at the CPIB website. Some of these details of those days, I went to the CPIB website. They're very proud. We say they did this case, 1996, you know, all of that, 1975. If there is so many incidents, I mean, over a period of 40 years, regularly every 5-10 years you have this incident, what kind of advice has the CPIB given to this political party? If it's 40, 50 years of shenanigans, I mean, as a bureaucracy, right, you must set the golden standard. So it seems, because the PAP has been left unchecked, because in the early days there was no multi-party system, and now we have a one-party dominated system. There's no accountability. So you will see that for every incident, the action taken is not consistent. Meaning, nobody has been sacked. They all resigned. What am I? One incident, right? But previously, they just resigned. Sometimes there was no by-election. They just wait 6 months later, they call for general election. So so if you want to understand this issue, and I come back to the 3 points that I raised about public accountability, anti-corruption, which is here. The evidence is clear as crystal. You put from 1966 to 23, you will see all the gaps, very jarring. And this is all from public record. And then you have CPIB putting up some of this incident with no analysis, right? The analysis is so straightforward, right? Here's the fun fact. In a single SMC, right? In a couple of occasions, when the person has been resigned, found guilty, the next election, that constituency no more. Sounds familiar, right? Yeah. So which means there is multi-level of accountability to be needed.
James?
Yes.
Professor Jonathan Hua is an authority on corruption in Singapore. Do you make reference to his work?
No, absolutely not. Why? Because when I was an undergraduate, for my questioning of the national values, I was given a third-class honors by John Hua. My American professor gave me a first class.
Oh, yeah. I read your book on politics.
Yeah, before that. And then my thesis was the only one has to go to Australia for adjudication. Because first class, fairly good student, first class, critique of national values, third class, had to go to Australia. Australia, you know, middleman gave me second class.
Completely different,
So, excuse me, if I cite his work only to criticize it. Yeah, and that was, Arun Bala was there. But I was doing philosophy. I should have taken philosophy honors, not the political science, on my fault. Probably, well, at least they will give me a 2-1. Not a plus.
Yeah, you would have done one.
Yeah. So, yeah, so coming back to the analysis, so SMC more accountable, GRC no accountable. It's a regular occurrence of 5-10 years intermission. You have one of these things. You have those called moral, ethical issues of a personal relationship. We don't question that so much, but look at the process of how those was managed. Yeah. There is no consistent pattern of behavior. So you have a party 40, 50 years, 60 years in power, where its level of process, for those of us who have done business, right, 3 to 5, wow, our protocol SOP is so good. What, 60 years in power, party SOP, you don't have. And then why would you as a political party in power for 60 years go and follow civil service guidelines? Why would you do that? And we are equally responsible because we don't question, right? They have committed the sin of omission. They don't tell the truth. So they omit facts. It's the sin of omission. That's a mortal sin.
They never lie.
Yes.
But they never tell the whole truth.
Yeah, that is called the sin of omission, because I believe God was referred to in the recent parliamentary, right? The sin of omission is the mortal sin. You go to hell. Right? Ben is reflecting. Sorry to be biblical today. So I will just pause here for now and yeah, happy to interact.
Bala.
Yeah. And there's one more thing.
Thank you. Yeah. You know, I go to that remark you made earlier, that the future of politics in this part of the world will have to be a coalition politics. But in Singapore, you don't see any real coalition politics. And I don't even see the PAP engaging in a coalition politics with any of the other parties. And they've never done that. But if you say that, you know, this is the route to go, and this is where the future is, how do you envisage coalition politics here? And why will it come about?
I mean, we have to look at the results. So here it's values-based. Coalition needs to be values-based. Who would have thought that the BN would be wiped solo in Malaysia, Barisan Nasional? Barisan Nasional is only in name, it's only UMNO. MIC, MCA, zero. So they shouldn't even be called Barisan Nasional. They should be just called UMNO. But the progressives did not have the vote, the numbers, the PH, Pakatan Harapan, and PKR, the more dominant and progressive bloc, also couldn't gather, but it was not overall dominant. So in an ideal world, you should have a coalition with those who share the same values. But what we are seeing is the politics of expediency, right? And what happens both in Thailand and in Malaysia, and I started with Malaysia first, we spoke a lot about Thailand. You see, we know that the biggest problem in Malaysia now is the three R's: race, religion, and loyalty. You see, Malaysia, you know, we talk about harmony. You know, in diverse society, we always build harmony. But Malaysia cannot build that harmony. Why? Because its harmony measures are always divided. Jakin, Islam, and all that component. If you are a minor Islamic sect, which is not endorsed by the mainstream, that's even worse. Then you have under the Ministry of Unity, non-Islam groups. So multi-faith groups, right, cannot bring Islamic groups into a coalition. So this is the dilemma, right? So the PKR, right, Anwar, in order to differentiate himself from BN, which was, you know, the 3 R's, introduced diverse multiculturalism and social justice, because he wanted to appeal to the Malay vote bank, but also to the other communities. So he needed a device. Is he against the 3 R's? No, because it would be political suicide. So it is, he practiced 3 R's with a tone of soft multiculturalism and justice to all communities, social fairness, equity, right? So Malaysian politics is cut like that. So the assumption going into the election was, okay, PKR is reformist, the Chinese voters threw their back, the Indian voters 50-50, because extreme minorities, they are always not stable, right? But he cannot carry the multicultural agenda through, because he don't have the numbers. So he has to partner with UMNO, yeah, and because of that, he had to compromise. So he began publicly to say, my government will not support LGBTI groups, for example. Islam will be the religion of the country. Malays will continue to get more support because he's fighting for votes in Kelantan and Terengganu. So that's it. Okay, it's a very racialized society, so it requires a racial, religious. Let's move away from that. Let's move to Thailand.
No, sorry. Before you go on to Thailand, right? The 3 R's, religion. Pakatan National actually campaigns on pro-Islamic values. So do you see a danger that they are pushing towards a more extremist Islamic kind of agenda?
Okay, I think we need to put that. So what Alfred asked is the Pakatan National, is it going through a more sort of extremist, racist agenda? My reading across the region, right, is like this. The internet has reduced everybody's monopoly on information and everybody's monopoly on agenda setting. So there is a big disruption. The ruling elites can feel it. They can feel their power slipping away. They do not have total control, but they are trying to hold on. So at this period of time change, the hardcore loyalties of these regimes, they engage in extreme measures. You can call them radicals, you can call them extremists. In some countries where race and religion is not so much a marker, let's say in Thailand or in Cambodia, they will be ultra-nationalists, but all of an extreme form, because they need to go right-wing in order to rally their support for the elites who are slowly losing their power. It's a large effort. So it's coming back to Malaysia. Yes, the Malay vote bank is 60%, and they are trying to campaign, but the Malay vote is very, very varied. It is not homogeneous. Many Malays, you know, like people of Muslim faith, are very different. When I go to Malaysia, you know, I'm told by Muslim women, James, don't talk about freedom to believe or freedom not to believe. I am forced to believe. That's what last week I was presenting something on 3 R's at the Malaysian Bar Council.
These are urban Malays.
Yeah. Women, it's my right not to wear the tudung. I don't need an imam to tell me. Right? So the Malaysian context is very, very varied within that, right? And for example, one NGO, Sisters in Islam, right? They want rights for Muslim women not to wear the hijab, among other things. You know, and they say, look, the other problem with or challenge in Malaysia is they want the mainstream Sharia law over civil law, right? So Sharia law is supreme. So there are other challenges there for, you know, other communities and things like that. So coming back, you will see right-wing extremism, radicalization, ultra-nationalists will be the features of campaigns and hate as societies go through a regime change. It's a natural manifestation. And we, you know, coming back to Singapore, that's why you have all these hate signs, you know, spouting negativity. You know, right now we can already recognize all the fake accounts, right? No persona and things like that. So this is very important. So Singapore is also, for me, in a crossroad. The ruling party is properly exposed. And if I bring in that whole historical list of issues, they resign strategically before elections, there's no accountability, there's no process. CPIB, you know, celebrates their achievements of investigation, but they have no analysis. They have not told us whether they have advised this institution to introduce more compliance. Even if we take a positive approach, you know, we are involved in so many things that deal with, you know, money matters. Every year, you know, you go to an accountant or you go to an auditor or a partner and so on, they will tell you, okay, these are the gaps. Let's strengthen it. Let's put more processes in place so we have more diligence, more better reporting and all that. 60 years, and CPIB cannot advise a major institution that has had so many people over the years. Something is not right. Something is not right. Right? So until we look at it from a longitudinal point of view, we might be myopic in just looking at this incident, right? Because the GRC system also doesn't give you accountability, right? So you have now what, 5 GRCs empty? I'm talking about 2 parties, right, that are in parliament with elected seats. 5 GRC empty, that is 700,000 voters affected. You add West Coast, another 150, that's 850,000. So that is nearly 40% of the electorate. The electorate was only about 2.2, I think. Right?
James,
yeah.
I suspect that PAP dominant politics is coming to an end. Because even in the coming presidential election, I suspect that the votes will be very much split.
Okay, Arun, my son, over to you.
I can't help thinking that we are covering a lot of things. So if it's okay with you, I'll just agree that there are many examples of people being unfairly treated and people being treated
how do you call it, unfairly in terms in that they get off scot-free. I mean, whether it's like 4,000 cases and so on and so forth, I'm quite sure there are many other stories told and untold. And it's not unexpected. I mean, even one of the ministers, when his car was scratched, okay, they can catch the culprit when the culprit went to scratch it the second time. So anybody will be able to tell you, if you want to put up an exercise just to catch someone to scratch your car, how many people must you be using for how many weeks, and so on and so forth. Who can get that kind of benefit? Obviously not a common person. And they dare to use this example to boast that the police are so efficient and so on and so forth. But obviously everybody knows that it is only the select few that get it. And when so there are many other stories, right? When SQ can convert one of their planes to a flying hospital, right? I mean, so it's not that we begrudge and kind of stuff. There are a lot of these examples. So the point I'm trying to get at simply is that whether it's in Thailand, Malaysia, and so on and so forth, whether people need to be on horse trade a bit because of exigencies of, like you say, Anwar has to give some allowances to Malays and so on and so forth. He himself is personally appealing to say, please trust me, sort of, so that I can consolidate and so on and so forth. That was, I think, your point. So I think it goes without saying that everybody was, at the end of the day, I'm just reminded that what Mao Zedong said, that power comes from the barrel of the gun. In other words, of course, we are not talking about guns, whether it's in Thailand or Singapore, but unless you have the political power to change the government, a lot of these things will just continue. I mean, we are here 40 years, 50 years, talking about kind of things. Is quite frustrating, you know. Just a small story, okay? When during my before my time in school, we had quite a lot of science labs. Catholic High did not have enough science lab. Okay, LKY called up the teacher in charge of our school and said, "Can you help Catholic High with some of the giving them some time on with your science lab? After all, you had more than that." So the guy said, "Okay, let me see how I can schedule." He came up with the idea. He said, "Okay, since we have the science lab in our school, we will use the science lab, but only in the morning. Catholic High will only use it in the afternoon." That very afternoon,
can you come to the point? What's the point?
Okay, that very afternoon, the teacher was fired for making that decision. And this was before 1970 something. So
basically, let me summarize what you are trying to say.
My point,
you're basically saying that the political system run by the incumbent government, right, is actually practicing double standards, right? When it comes to their own interests, they are very vigilant. When it comes to other people's interests, they put it aside.
Right.
So that is the kind of cultural problem in the political system, right? Would you want to comment about that?
I mean, everybody knows that.
Yeah. So what's the question? And the conclusion you have come to is that you got to get rid of the government, right? And have a new government, right? Okay, so that's the conclusion, right?
Yeah. Correct. Yes. That's the gist of it.
Okay.
Okay, I think I have a lot of supporters. Any other comment?
Yeah, I'll just ask a brief question, a quick one. Okay, basically there's as all of us know, there's a recent spate of vaccination of MPs in Parliament, right, over so-called affairs, personal affairs. So my question is this, okay, what right does a party or maybe institution have to order the vaccination of the MPs, right? Based on what? Is it based on PAP's code of conduct, or is it based on the code of conduct for MPs? Because as far as I can discern, it does not objectively impact or impair the MP to carry his duties. So I felt that unless there is a strict objectified code of conduct, otherwise we might be following PAP's game plan, or maybe a certain party's game plan, or dominant or incumbent game plan for so many years, just because they've been in power for so long. So are we following their guideline, or are we following a certain objectified standard rule or guidelines for MPs, which I believe in this case does not impair or impact their duties or to carry out their duties? Thank you.
I'm not sure whether your what you're doing, do you conduct polls with regards to the recent happenings, just to get a feeling from the ground? That's my first question. Now the second question is that over the years, AGC has reported many lapses, right? But it seems that nothing has been done to take care of the culprits. So perhaps your comments?
I'll circle back to my job. First of all, no, we didn't do any. I didn't do any polls. Polls take time and money, and so one of the things I want to just throw it out to colleagues here is, we do need an independent kind of research institute in Singapore that looks at some of these, as you said, lapses, public policy issues, that should be kind of citizen funded, privately funded, so that you do not get eaten by the state, right? So it's very important. It doesn't have to be big. It can have a competent core, small group of people, then the rest can be on a piecemeal basis, volunteer.
That's done by IBS.
No, so like I said, independent. So I think we need that to adhere to all of this, especially issues like this type. And because we don't have that kind of capacity, right? I believe political parties and all those that I have come across with, I always felt that you should have an in-house research ability. You must have. You must develop. It's very important. If you say media is important, research and policy development is equally important as media. Because without content, there's no media. Right? Because until you have that intellectual capacity, rigor, and analysis, right, you cannot push up your content. You can have them, So I think those two are interrelated, and I think people cannot respond to the AGC stuff. Because political parties, even if you have MPs or NCMPs, right, you need that research support. And NCMPs are highly disadvantaged because they get next to nothing, to support their work. So that's the issue. So I come back to Michael's questions about whose rule are we playing. I think we are not playing it by any rules. I mean, if you look at the reserves, operation of the GICs and Temasek holding and all that. In the old days, under Lee Kuan Yew, right? Very opaque. But only in the recent years, slowly, we have some kind of reporting. Not satisfactory at all, right? But so the system is still, in that sense, in terms of transparency, is still third world. This is it, right? So when it comes to holding the ruling party, you know, it's impossible when the judges tell you, I'm sorry, we cannot interpret the law because the law has been interpreted, passed by Parliament. We can only give you the verdict and how much sentencing based on other previous case laws, right? And some technical issues. And then if you want to appeal, you have to go to the minister because the minister has the final say, not the courts. So we are caught up in the system. And coming back, so I'd say the first point, anti-corruption, public accountability, I think we've exhausted that. The second point, reform. So any political party that wants to take traction must have a clear reform agenda. Then you can grab traction. If you are same like the PAP, you cannot stand up from the ground. You cannot. So that's the defining. So, and then the third point, right? Coalition. Because no party is going to win, right? The ruling party, of course, will try to put forward, but my sense, you know, cyclical sense, I think they will suffer a 3 to 4% vote swing for sure, 4 or 5, and the dip in some constituency will be more, you know, and that's where, you know, I mean, the key thing, you know, is at this stage is to cut off the 2/3 majority. Yeah, because this is a natural progress. Even in Malaysia, they cut off the 2/3 majority, and then you build the momentum for change.
Okay, James, so 2 questions. First question is on reform. Now, as far as I know, SDP has a lot of sound policies that they've been pushing out through all the years, and they've been talking about reform also for a long time. But if you really notice, a lot of the policies or suggestions that SDP came out with has been incorporated into the PAP, although they will never admit that. So I'm struggling to understand why does Dr. Chi and SDP keep pushing out this, knowing that their suggestions will be incorporated and plagiarized, and eventually what are they trying to achieve? Because when Dr. Chi was younger, he was very fiery and really wanted reform and leftists and support of the underclass. But now they seem to have mellowed out a lot. And I think that's a problem here for political parties because they are so constricted by the regulations and the restrictions that the PAP put in place for electoral process that they're basically tied one hand behind the back. So moving to your third point on coalition and possibility of change in government, do you see that the only way that we have a coalition is an opposition coalition? Yeah.
Why, my understanding of why the SDP did, not just the SDP and later on other parties, it was one of the first, is actually to rebut the idea that the opposition movement has no ideas. So that's why there was an aggressive push. And you know, there were all kinds of people, non-political party people who came, the health policy was literally written by doctors. The old days, Paul was just one of the members of that committee. We had so many doctors who did that. So specialist people came behind those papers, and that's why that. The other thing that all political parties collectively did was to create, to push out the myth that opposition parties only come out during election. That has also been fully dispelled because that argument cannot be used. So you see increasingly these arguments by the PAP about the opposition, right? The naysaying and negative framing has been mostly rebutted, right? It is being repeated by, for example, the the trolls, for example. But you know, when you troll for so long, 10, 15 years, people are immune also, right? And then the second thing is, we know the mainstream media is like that, right? Even if the young reporters just report properly, you know, the editors will change the headline and, you know, all of that. So, I mean, the fact that they have to put trust says everything. The lack of trust and all the shenanigans of, you know, building up the numbers or ballooning the numbers, yeah, it doesn't work. So, I think there is enough awareness in the body politic that I think we cannot take the crap anymore. Yeah, it's like, don't even try to pull wool over our eyes, you know. So we have switched off. Now it's all about action. Now, but the one thing I want to bring to the fore, right? We have to look around and see that unlike Malaysia, Singapore is also a place with 45% of the residents in Singapore are not voters. And we live among their midst. So when they're not voters, right, there's also that kind of impact. Because every family has a foreigner in their midst. So we often don't talk about the dynamics of how that works, right? Many people take up citizenship simply for functional reasons, right? And not for any sort of, you know, sort of political, or let's say not even political, let's say values-based principle. If you go to Thailand, right, and Singapore, the people who come to Singapore, they have a particular value. They come here because it's a place to work, generate income, very materialistic, you know, it's efficient, clean, and so on. They need high wages, ideally, depending on which country. You go to Thailand, the motivation is different. The foreigners who come, in a minute, foreigners who come, they want to work for NGOs. They don't mind getting $1,000 US dollars, 30,000 baht to be an English language teacher. You know, they can live simply, they can eat street food. So the type of people who come to Thailand, and I'm talking about people from all over the globe, come for different reasons, right? And you know, I also want to explain why I decided to register Asia Center in Bangkok. So we have a joke among international organizations. The ideal regional hub in Southeast Asia should be in Jakarta, because the ASEAN Secretariat is there, a lot of some of the regional institutions there, but nobody wants to go. Traffic is still horrible, the bureaucratic red tape is extremely high, it's also a very expensive city. Singapore wants to be the hub, but nobody will come to Singapore unless Singapore pays the airfare and accommodation. Thailand pays nothing, but everybody wants to go to Bangkok. So I decided to open the Asia Center there because everybody from the world is going to come. And every week I have visitors, international visitors. Yeah, I hold my annual conferences in Bangkok because everybody wants to come to Bangkok for a conference and stay another 2 days to go to the night market. You know? Yeah, I can't do that in Singapore. I mean, not to mention, you know, the culture of engaging in this kind of intellectual work. You organize a talk like this, full house. You have Myanmaris over there, you know, there's no special rules and things like that. So, coming back to that point. Yeah, there was a question.
Sorry, I think we have come to we are running out of time. Very urgent. Very quick one. Okay.
Yeah, because For me, you talk about all the recent shenanigans by the ministers and all that. I just saw that, you know, when the PM just stood up to sort of defend his ministers, I felt that there wasn't the leadership there. He just looked really tired and all that. And so, how do you see this? And a lot of what he says, he contradicts himself. He talks about being sensitive to families, other people's families, but not his own family, you know? So, I mean, people would like, what is he talking about? In fact, the ministers sound more powerful than he does, you know? Shamgam sounds more powerful than he does. So, going into the next election, how would voters feel about this? Do they want to vote for a party where, you know, the leader is like very tired and yeah?
I think your question answers itself. Yeah. So I'm afraid that we have to come to an end, and thank you very, very much. I think the most important takeaway from what you said is we really need an independent research group in Singapore. This is absolutely crucial because all the think tanks that are set up by the government are all mouthpieces. So that's actually not
Prof. Academia.sg.
Yeah. So yeah. Just to give you one simple example, right? Myself, with Yo Lam Kiong and the other guy, Hu Sui Yong, we wrote a paper on how to solve the HDB problem, the HDB dilemma, right? Yesterday at the Parliament, the minister basically has regurgitated it because why? Because the government is not dead trap of its own. They can't do anything. They have to follow our recommendation.
I don't know who is that.
Right? This also coincides with Chisun Guan's recommendation and also Yong Man Wai's recommendation. Right? Yeah. So I think that it's so important that we must have an independent research group, and I hope that some of us here and maybe work together with all the other NGOs and political parties to help each other. So thank you all very much. By all means, hang around.